Yeah, making a video, dospook video, I suppose, response to what he was saying anyway. Hard to put it in a category. Let's just kind of more of this, okay, so he concedes he's a theist or some kind of religious person, so we're already from a different perspective. I mean, it's automatically a misstep in terms of logical continuity and perspective. Because obviously without some intendo or some presumption of purpose, you're left with a mechanism in gladiator war, consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. And these are not positive things. We're playing a game that doesn't have fundamental elements in it, right? Consent, deserve, fairness. These are not concepts built into this game. You're saying to me this game doesn't need those things, or you're implying that you think humanity's existence is somehow enough of a good to justify the absence of those things. That being, a good being, a happy, comfortable being, somehow makes up for it all. Okay? And yeah, I'm logically saying no to that. You did do some back and forth. You played a lot of both arguments. I mean, which is, stylishly people get away with that stuff, but it's sort of annoying. Devil advocating your own position and implying you're being more generous to it than you really are, because in the conclusion you basically close doors to those things, and so that's sort of irritating. There's no real acknowledgement of even the video has in the title the word imposition, as if you're closing imposition as a reasonable word, and yet you've done nothing. You've dealt no way with the word or the concept itself. You've just run from it and found rationalizations to say somehow actions are not actions, that you can divorce yourself of consequence to actions. And that's all that's being discussed, is the property, the category is actor. I'm actor. I commit actions. Actions have implications. If they have implications that are negative, it's justifiable to call that an imposition. And it's not about the fact that you are going to justify it because you can imagine there's a pretty diamond that will come out of the mind, and so therefore it's okay to squish people to get it. I mean, it's just, you're just making rationalizations based on anecdotal almost, just made up, just imagined shiny cities on a hill. You'll have your shiny city on the hill, and in the gutter will be the slaves, that you'll make polish out of. And that's the real question here. It's not about whether there are humans who are happy. No, the question is there anything it's doing, or functioning, producing, that can justify, again, the mess, the slop, the blood. So I'm back to my ambulance analogy, right? We couldn't justify ambulances speeding if they weren't rescuing. If they were running off to get some yummy chocolate cake, you couldn't justify having any victims. So they have to be doing something necessary, which is undoing harm, rather than doing something not necessary, which is procreating, or adventuring. And so that's the difference. Again, if it was your, you just don't have a right, I guess, in the context, to presume for other people that they accept you using them as pawns to play your game. And that's what it basically comes down to. You're assuming for the natural world that it has consented, that it would consent, that it would say, yes, it's worth it, please, Tie me to the game. Make me a pawn in your great game of checkmate. You know, yes, please, please, please. And I'm arguing the opposite argument, and we both have to argue for that third party because it doesn't have a voice, it doesn't have a mind capable of expressing opinions, so we have to put the opinion in its mouth. And I'm arguing that I don't think your opinion is reasonable, because your opinion is based on a completely human eccentric, egomaniacal exaggeration of the worth of the game. And that if we have honest demonstrations of our dishonesty. And the honest demonstration would be the fact that we don't lament the absence of Martians. We don't lament the absence of the billions of extra people that could be on Earth right now. It's just a truth. And we don't lament it because it doesn't fit into our part of the checkmate game, the personal part. And that's all this is about, is a personal perception, your personal perception of a need for your heritage to survive, or your lineage, or whatever bullshit it is that you're finding the world would be diminished, the universe would be diminished without it. So, I mean, this imposition thing is so much deeper and so much realer than you're giving any account to. You're not only not accounting for the imposition on the humans, who will be factually, non-consensually imposed upon, but you're not even coming close to taking account of the biosphere that pays for every click of the clock on the game you're playing. There is no game without their slavery to your game. And, I mean, that's in itself bullshit. But, I mean, I'm just saying that I can't really have a conversation with somebody who will not concede that our rational, and that our brains click, that they add and divide and multiply things together, and that they come up with decisions. And it's those decisions, those perspectives, those points of view that create their decisions, their actions in the world. And that people procreate not because they must, not because they have to, but merely because they have a clock ticking, a wheel turning, a gear turning, that has a bunch of ego grease on it, that has a bunch of I want shit on it, that has all the teeth are illegitimate teeth, in the sense that they're screaming psychology. They're all psychological teeth. None of them have any philosophical, rational, or truth-based integrity. It's entirely a gear of bullshit. Only bullshit leads you to the conclusion to build nuclear power plants when no one needs any energy. I mean, to reduce it back to the Buddha kind of style argument, the disease is your need. You do not treat the suffering by treating it after you slop it on the ground. You do not treat the roadkill, the road injury. You prevent the road injury. That's the rational thing to do, is go for prevention. You don't sit there and band-aid, you cure. And you're negating that logic, and it's fundamental to the word impose. Because fundamental to the word, to even having a conversation about the word impose, is the idea of not imposing. The conversation isn't about some inevitability of roadkill. The conversation is about the fact that we have every capacity to prevent the roadkill. And that prevention, in real fact, costs nothing but the suspension of a plastic, synthetic, psychologically greased shit wheel turning in people's heads. that you just extract the shit wheel, the crap gear, the nonsense mush bullshit out of their head, take that crappy gear out, and the machine will work better. And it won't create the roadkill. It won't create the problem that needs to be mitigated against. So, yeah, I mean, that's the subject. The subject is the connected word to imposition, the word that has a solid line connecting the two categories of behavior, our description of action, is the word prevention. And you just can't separate the fact that the antonym to imposition is not imposing. That there is the choice, there is the option, and the discussion is about what should make the choice, what should decide whether impose or not impose is chosen. Procreation, whether you accept its description as imposition, it's in the category that they both fit in. Okay, so you want to come up with some other word in which the word imposition and the word procreation are both in that category. Action created by brain. I mean, shall we have that category? Actions imposed by brain function. But the bottom line is, it's an action. Action is imposition. Action is, again, it is a thing. And you're trying to say it doesn't exist as a thing initiated by a chain of cause and effect. And the cause you can relate to things you don't need. You don't need to go to a first cause. You just need to go to an acknowledged, describable function, a sub-function. So yes, there is a first cause to our psychology. You can go all the way back to the chemistry, go all the way back to the physics, go all the way back to the Big Bang. But the fact is, we know the nature of our psychology. We know the nature of its function. Whether your God has just another version of psychology than my description of it. The fact is, our psychology is a byproduct of this survival mechanism that we have ingrained compulsions that exist only to accomplish the crudest of mechanisms, to satisfy consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction, to satisfy the requirements of a hundreds of millions of years of gladiator worship. And this is what you have to do to survive in the arena. And that's the nature of our psychology. It is not a brilliant nature. It's a crude and simplistically unenlightened, goal-oriented mechanism. And you're saying we should, in some way, accredit that goal definer, that goal establisher, as having some sort of innate credibility. And obviously, I would fundamentally disagree with any notion that that would be deserved, that would be reasonable based on when we know the origin, the crude origin. And we know the fact that even after hundreds of millions of years of gladiator worship, built into the mechanism, built into it, is no concept of consent, fairness, and deserve. So, I can't. There's not much I can say beyond the fact that I don't think you're being reasonable. I don't think you're being logical. I think you are being entirely psychological, and you're just using intellectual jargon to find rationalizations to justify your personal subjective attachments. You're saying, I have an attachment, I have a perceptual need, and I wish to find a way to make that perceptual need coherent to a logical mandate, our logical function, our logical purpose, our logical accomplishment. And I'm saying all you're doing is rationalizing. All you're doing is finding ways to extract through illusion alone the fact, yes, you've produced a bird, but the fact is you produced it out of your pocket, or it's up your sleeve. You're just trying tricks, word games, to make it seem like, there's some sort of logical base logic in the universe that somehow acknowledges function in creating need that doesn't need to exist, in creating the need for electricity to be produced, and therefore we have a justification to create a melting down nuclear power plant. Well, you don't have a justification for any of it. And all of it is created by the act of procreation. That's the cause. That's the proximate cause of all of it. Yeah. Yeah, convicted, guilty. It wasn't just the driver, the escape driver at the bank robbery. It was the robber, who had a gun and he did the shooting. The procurators are the guilty party. It's not an accident. It's not, I just trusted the wrong people kind of bullshit. No, it's a willful act of obnoxious arrogance that is quite suitably called imposition. An imposition of judgment, an imposition of desire, an imposition of nothing of merit except subjective arrogance. Yeah. So until next time. Yeah, leaves. Yeah, a few of them. Anyway, until next time. Yeah, gotta do some work. Blah, blah, blah.